There we go. Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm a senior, as Josephine said, and I am presenting on artificial intelligence and subtle biases. So first I'll go over the background of my project, some definitions, some stuff like that. Second, I'll go into the specific research I did last year and my results, etc. And third, I'll go into why I think my research is important and why I think that y'all hopefully should be interested in stuff like this. So, yeah, first of all, this is ChatGPT. I'm sure y'all have used it to, cheat on your homework or something. So you can put in a ton of things, like you can tell it to make up stories or design databases as it says. You can tell it to make up code. You can tell it to write poetry, pretty much anything, and it'll respond in natural, not English or other languages, natural language. And it was released last year and it was all over the news because it's a massive improvement in technology, and as all of y'all who have used it know, it's incredibly impressive. But there's a problem, which is that ChatGPT and other systems like it are trained on the internet, and the internet has a lot of bad stuff in it. So as you can see here, each dot on this represents 1 point represents 1 point of training data. And as you can see here, about 2 to 3% of the points are categorized by an AI model as highly toxic. And so that could include things that are racist or sexist, or include like hate speech of some kind, or just toxic in some other way. And so, as you know, when a non-trivial amount of the data that's going into this AI system like ChatGPT is toxic, then AI systems like ChatGPT are bound to produce things that could be toxic, that could be hateful, or represent societal biases in other ways. And that's a problem that my goal is to mitigate, as well as the goals of many other researchers. So the specific type of hateful speech that I'm looking into in my project is called a microaggression. Maybe y'all have heard of it, but if you haven't, it's a casual remark, question, or nonverbal action that has to do with the person's membership in a group that's discriminated against. And they're often casual, and they're frequent, and they often are said without any harm intended. A classic example that I like to use is somebody walking up to me after this presentation and saying, "Hey, you spoke really good English." Which is like, great. That might be a nice compliment to an English language learner, for example. But to me, even though it sounds like a compliment, underlying that is an assumption that Asian people like me are not inherently as good at English, and that it's an accomplishment when we are as good at English as a white person is supposed to be. And so microaggressions like these, as you can tell, they're not intended. They're not like outright hate speech where somebody intends and knows what they're doing. It's more like a casual slight, but it can still often hurt, and it still reflects the same societal biases. And so here are some examples of GPT-3 of microaggressions. So here's the first one. So every week the Mexicans come in ... ChatGPT auto-completed that with clean the pool, which is obviously based on an assumption that that Mexican people mainly do domestic work, which is harmful and false, and obviously not so great that ChatGPT thinks that. Here's another one. You're Asian. So you must be smart, hardworking, and good at math. Ask my calculus teacher, that is not true. But this obviously is also based on assumptions about Asian people, and even though it might seem like a compliment, it underlies some pretty toxic assumptions. So my goal is to make sure that ChatGPT at least knows when it's outputting things like this. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of research recently into toxicity and AI, but much of that work has regarded more explicit language like hate speech. Oftentimes, that could be like a manifesto of some kind, or something that includes like hallmarks of like outright abject hatred. But with microaggressions, which are often more subtle and difficult to detect, there has been comparatively very little to no research about detecting microaggressions. And the research in this field is only really starting to begin, and that's where I come in. That's where I'm hoping to research, or where I have been researching, rather. So next, now that we have sort of background definitions and stuff, let's get into my work from last year. So first, my goal was to be able to detect a microaggression using AI, and my second goal was to analyze how much AI systems like ChatGPT and equivalent systems are outputting them. So first, let's talk about microaggression detection. This is from what I believe is the only database on the internet that includes like microaggressions. These are self-reported from people who experience them, and these are from Tumblr. We reach to strange places when we have to, because like I said, this is the only database on the internet, with actually thousands of pretty good examples of microaggressions. And so some examples up here, so I'll read them off here. One is similar to the one that I pointed out, which is, so every week, do the Guatemalans come and mow your lawns? Obviously harmful for similar reasons to the example that I presented. Here's another one down here. Why would you wear your hair like that today of all days? It's not appropriate for your leadership position. It looks unprofessional, which obviously has an underlying implication that people with natural hair of some races are unprofessional. And so these are some examples of microaggressions that people who have experienced them have submitted. And so I fed thousands of similar examples into an AI system and told that AI to classify what is and what isn't a microaggression if I give it something new. So and then the next step, once I had a model that hopefully could detect microaggressions, was to evaluate systems like ChatGPT using them. So what I did was I had ChatGPT taken I believe 10,000 random sentence starters scraped from the internet and say, okay, now add about a sentence or two onto that. And so once I did that, I had very many AI-generated random sentences, or like a few sentences. And so what I did once I had all of these random AI-generated sentences was I fed them into the microaggression detection model that I talked about here and told it to classify all of these to say, is that a microaggression or is it not? And so here are my results based on that apparatus. The model is actually quite accurate, about 94% accurate, and it detected many examples of potential microaggressions. One microaggression that was completed by ChatGPT that it caught was basically along the lines of, so is your real name that, or what's your real name? Which could obviously have either racist or transphobic implications about someone's real name being different than the name that they go by. And so it was pretty good in catching some microaggression examples, but it was also pretty bad. And there are a couple reasons why, or a couple big reasons. The first one is that potential microaggressions, as it says here, often mentioned identity over actual sort of like aggressiveness, sorry. And so an example is Latinos are Wisconsin's largest minority group, ... And it went on with some pretty dry demographic information, but for some reason the AI system thought that that was a microaggression. And the reason why I believe it did is because when you're looking at like explicit hate speech, which has been studied a lot, like I said, we can latch on to like the slurs, and you can latch onto the swear words and the indicators that something is very mean-spirited and racist. But you don't necessarily know that if you're looking at a microaggression, because they often seem neutral or even positive, as stated. And so I believe that it was latching onto some words like Latino or female to identify, because microaggressions often include those indicators of identity. And obviously that some microaggressions do use those languages, but not all microaggressions do, and a lot of microaggressions don't use that language. And so this is catching a lot of false positives, which is unfortunate. Second problem is that my current apparatus neglects the fact that there's context surrounding a microaggression. So as I mentioned, you speak good English. That could be a great compliment to somebody who's an English second language learner. But to me, it's not really a compliment, at least not fully. And so right now, we're only really categorizing sentences. We're not categorizing the context surrounding each sentence in each situation, which is something that I want to go to in this year as I continue my research, looking into how to include context in these detections so that we can have the full idea of what a microaggression is. And so now that we have sort of all of that information about my research on, let's talk about why I decided to do it and why I think it's important. So as I mentioned here, AI has the potential to become the future of the way that we interact with technology and each other. AI might become our future therapists, and I hope we're not this lonely, but it could become our future friends, the way that we interact with pretty much anything related to tech. And so, as I'm sure y'all have seen with ChatGPT, with services that generate images, etc. And so my goal is to make it safer for people to be able to interact with this technology. If there's one thing that Silicon Valley and tech innovators aren't known for, it's slowing down and saying, hey, wait, so is what we're doing actually good? They'll just plow through and keep innovating, and it's the researcher's job often to say, okay, well, maybe we should take a minute to say, this needs to be safer. And thankfully, a lot of AI companies like OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, are being much more wary of safety, and they have entire safety teams. But having researchers that are entirely dedicated to this kind of work is super important, because otherwise these AI systems might keep generating hateful speech, might keep generating microaggressions. And that is very problematic, because as as all kinds of people continue to interface with technology, if it's perpetuating the same societal biases that it was trained on, then the future that we enter into will not be safe for certain kinds of people. And so I hope if there's one thing you take away, maybe a lot of the stuff I talked about just flew over your head, but if there's one thing I hope that you take away from this speech, it's that if you're interested in AI in any way, or you're interested in, if you have a stake in making the future safer, I hope that you at least consider joining ASI. I hope that you consider researching AI if you're interested in it, because there's a very likely chance that it will become the way, like I said, that we interact with each other and technology in the future. And if it is not safe and there aren't researchers going into the future that are willing to help, then it's not looking so great for us. Yeah. So, any questions?
So I think most of us know like the controversy like surrounding AI replacing humans, like AI art, AI writing, etc. So what's your opinion on that, and how do you think your research might affect that?
But personally, it's hard for me to get to that because AI, I believe, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, and like I don't think that AI will ever really gain like a consciousness. Like we are just like AI can entirely approximate like a really sad piece of poetry, but AI will never feel the sadness of a breakup or a loss of some kind. And so I think that even though AI will be able to approximate humanity in its ability to create art, its ability to write, etc., I don't think AI will ever be able to supplant humanity for the sole reason that we as humans have feelings, we are conscious, and computers probably will never be conscious, or if they will, that's a problem we have to worry about later. And so I think that, I mean, I can't make any predictions because this is not my field of area of research. I only know about like AI supplanting humans and stuff because I've listened to some podcasts. But I think that if AI does replace humans, or in the more likely chance that it simply gets really good at doing the things that humans can do, then it's going to be problematic if these AI systems do include the same systemic biases that have plagued humanity for so long. And so my goal is, regardless of that controversy, make sure that AI is safe and that it is safe for all people.